Now we have been waiting for the naked version of the TVS Apache RR 310 ever since the bike was launched, well, 5 years ago. Now TVS Apache RTR philosophy has been from track to road, and that wasn't the case with the Apache RR because that bike was built for the track. Well, after racing the RR for 5 years now, we finally got the road version, the naked, the Apache RTR 310, and it's one hell of a bike. Now what makes this RTR 310 different from the RR 310 is the motor. Well, actually the motor is the same as the one on the RR 310, but this one is quite different inside because this one actually has a different airbox, it's got a different exhaust, and also it's got a higher compression ratio, which means this engine actually makes more power and more torque than the RR 310. 1.6 PS more and 1.4 Nm more. And along with that, what TVS has done is given this a larger rear sprocket. So while the gearbox and the gear ratios are identical to the RR 310, this one has a much larger rear sprocket, 4 teeth up. So it's 46 teeth at the back, which means your bottom end has gone up quite a bit. Well, what that means is the top end has been compromised a little bit, but it still saw 160 on the speedo, and the bike has plenty of grunt even at higher revs and higher speeds. But at low speeds and low gears, the bike really wants to lift its nose up all the time. Thank God it's got wheelie controls because otherwise it would be a pain in the city in the lower gears. And that makes the RTR 310 feel quite busy in the city at slow speeds in first and second gears.
This snappiness in lower gears is also down to the throttle response. Even in urban riding mode, on-off throttle changes feel quite jerky. Now this is acceptable in sport or track mode, but for everyday riding, the urban throttle map feels a little too aggressive.
So if you want to ride calmly, you have to ride in higher gears, 4th or 5th in the city. Thankfully it can carry 40 or 50 kph comfortably in those gears, so that's not a big problem. But out on the highway, if you're at 100 kph in 6th gear, your revs are just below 7,000, and at that point the problem is the vibes are back. Now because of the higher compression ratio, this motor has become vibey once again, like the original RR 310. And TVS had actually improved the bike over the years, but now this feels like it's back to the Gen 1 RR 310 in terms of vibes. So if you want to cruise on the highway over long distances, this bike will feel a little bit buzzy, especially on the pegs and the tank. Now it's got the same frame as the RR 310, but the key difference on the RTR is that it's a bit lighter. In fact, 4 to 5 kg lighter than the RR 310. And also because of the new subframe, you sit more upright, and that gives you a higher center of gravity. Plus you've got nice wide bars, which give you a lot of leverage, which means the bike is very easy to turn, and in the traffic it tips in way easier than the RR does. Now that does make this bike a lot of fun in the city. Of course, we did have a chance to ride this bike on a racetrack, and that's where the limitations of this bike, or rather this posture, show. Primarily the foot pegs, which are set a lot further forward and lower down compared to the RR, which means the pegs scrape as soon as you start entering the corners hard. And even the setup feels a bit softer compared to the RR 310, which is fine for the road, but on the track it feels a bit squishy. Now of course the front is fully adjustable and the rear can be adjusted for rebound and preload. So once you get the bike set up right, it might still be fun on a racetrack, but actually this bike is meant to live on the real world roads. That's where it truly shines.
Braking, or rather brake feel, has always been the Achilles heel of the Apaches, even the RR 310. And this lack of feel from the brakes even continues in the RTR 310. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of braking power, but because the lever feels soft in the initial bite, fine control of the brakes becomes quite tricky.
Now the RTR 310 meant to be a road bike, and the stance exemplifies that completely. Of course, the seat height is a lot lower compared to the RR, which means you can get your feet down very easily even if you're quite short. And of course the foot pegs, they are rear set but not much, and the handlebars, they are nice and wide and quite upright, so you don't lean forward towards them. So it gives you a very nice street fighter stance, which is actually quite enjoyable. And even the seat is actually quite spacious and roomy and decently comfortable, which means riding in the city every day should be a breeze, at least in terms of the ergonomics. And to top that off, of course, you have the seat which features heating and cooling. Now this seat cooling works really well at slower speeds, so in the city they should keep your bottom fairly cool even in fairly hot weather. Of course, when the speed builds up, you don't feel that effect as much.
This heated and cooled seat is probably a world first for any motorcycle. TVS has developed a unique thermoelectric device that can heat or cool the rider's seat without using any moving parts, refrigerant or a heating coil. And that's not all. The RTR 310 also gets a 6-axis IMU, which enables features like cornering ABS, cornering traction control, wheelie and stoppie control, and even something TVS calls cornering cruise control. Just like your conventional cruise control, this system will hold a certain speed without any throttle input, but with automatically reduced speed when you lean the bike into a turn. The RTR also gets a bi-directional quick shifter, which honestly is the smoothest we have used on any Indian built motorcycle and works perfectly pretty much at any speed. You also get 5 riding modes: rain, urban, sport, race and supermoto, although we really believe that the last one should have just been an ABS setting rather than a whole riding mode in itself. All these features can be controlled through the RTR's 5-inch color TFT screen that's responsive and readable, and even its layout changes depending on the chosen riding mode.
Now, even with its vibrations and its busy motor, the RTR 310 is actually a very interesting motorcycle and quite fun as well, especially in the urban environment. If you want to go touring though, this might not be the right bike. Here I think the RR 310 might be the better option. But if you want a bike for everyday use and weekend rides in the twisties, I think this RTR 310 will be heaps of fun. Of course, there are a couple of issues with that. Firstly is the price. Now this yellow bike comes in at rupees 2.64 lakh ex showroom, but this bike as configured with all the kits costs over rupees 3 lakhs ex showroom, and that does make it a bit pricey. If you want to see what kits are available for the RTR 310 and their pricing, you can see them on the table on your screen right now. Now compared to its sibling from BMW, the RTR 310 I can say without hesitation is a lot more fun to ride. It almost reminds me of the first gen Duke 390, and that's a good thing. And speaking of the Duke, compared to the current Duke, well, there are some gives and takes I would say, but that brings us to the other problem of the RTR, and that is the new Duke that's coming to us really soon. So how does this compare to that? Well, that's something we'll find out really soon. And if you want to know more, of course don't forget to hit that subscribe button and let us know what you think of the RTR 310 in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.